Thank you, everyone. Thanks to the Maui Economic Development Board for having us here at the Maui Energy Conference for this really important conversation. My name is Rocky Mould. I am the Executive Director of the Hawai'i Solar Energy Association. I've had the distinct honor and privilege of being one of the advocates for the solar industry at our trade association for the last 3 years. One thing about Hawaii's energy transition is that it really has been distributed energy resource forward. Of all the renewables that have been put on Hawaii's grids over the last decade and a half, about 47% come from distributed on-site solar, rooftop solar. And so that's really a distinct feature of our energy transition. So it's really been a privilege to work with this industry. There's a lot of know-how and knowledge and innovation that has occurred from the solar industry in Hawaii. And that's why I'm really honored to have with me this panel here today to discuss some of that know-how, some of that on-the-ground knowledge. So we're kind of shifting gears a little bit from sort of high policy discussions that we've had before. We're really going to hear from folks that have learned the hard lessons on the ground in our energy transition. First off, we have Ted Peck. Ted Peck is the president of Holu Energy. They are a local-born company that is doing some amazing, innovative work. I have the honor of Ted is on the HSEA board, so I've served with Ted for the last 3 years on the board, and it's been a privilege. He brings some really great experience from being a submarine officer in the United States Navy to the Hawaii State Energy Officer, the administrator of HSEO, to the private sector, the consulting world. And so he has a wealth of knowledge that he brings to this energy transition. And he has I wanted him for this panel because Holu has a really innovative way of putting together solar for multifamily homes that I think is something that could only have happened in Hawaii from the learning that we've gotten in Hawaii over the years. Next is Fred Brooks. Fred Brooks is a character of the solar industry. Many of you may know him. He has a very innovative company that cleans solar panels, Pacific Panel Cleaners. He is the owner and founder of that company. Fred, was also in the Navy, served 8 years in the Navy, is an electrical engineer, electrician, and teaches others about electrical engineering and teaching. And his knowledge doing operations and maintenance is really unique. And I think this is something that's going to become more and more important. And the stuff that we've learned here in Hawaii and that Fred specifically has learned is going to pay dividends going forward here and in the future. So looking forward to having him talk on that. And then next we have Jamie Swezey from the Footprint Project. Footprint Project came to Maui to help the people of Lahaina and the people of Maui in their time of need and developed solar-powered microgrids with the support of the solar industry. So Footprint Project partnered with boots on the ground here on Maui and on Oahu and in the state, and also other HSEA members that are on the mainland to really help the people of Maui out in their time of need. So without further ado, each of them is going to give about a 10-minute presentation, and then we're going to go to a Q&A. Please, if you have questions, let us know. We'll be hopefully answering them. So Ted, to you.
Thanks, Rocky. Good afternoon and aloha. I'm going to tell you about Holu's innovation deploying solar at scale in condominium and apartment communities. These are historically hard-to-reach communities and what we've been focused on since we founded the company. Our history our core leadership and engineering folks bring a history of deep experience working with DC coupled systems over the last decade, even though Holu itself is only, we're slide ahead. There we go. Sorry. Even though Holu is only 5 years old, okay? During that time, we have built up extensive experience in DC coupled systems as well as trying to solve the challenges for multi-dwelling unit or MDU communities. We work on the market, which means our systems and projects need to be bankable. MDUs historically have driven funding away from a solar perspective due to these four issues. Top line one is that load risk is a huge killer of project economics in MDU communities. How do you size a system for a single apartment that will have 1 or 2 dozen residences over the life of that system? That is a huge area of risk, but it's not alone. Also, you have to deal with the risk of what do you do with the energy that's stranded during a vacancy? How do you handle payment risk? And how do you incent the property owner who's not paying the electric bill to participate? So my partner and Holu CEO, Brad Hansen, and I, about 10 years ago, we developed this project, Mackay, in Kaleloa. Each of the almost 300 units in this neighborhood have a separate utility meter. We did extensive load analysis on these systems and these homes, and found out that using traditional no storage systems required building to the lowest common denominator. We actually cut out about a quarter of the homes from getting solar because they simply weren't economical under a non-NEM export tariff. Even so, the economics of the project with those cut out meant that no institutional investor would buy it. We ended up selling it to an individual. Regardless, that analysis really has reaped us some fruit that we're benefiting from today. So in 2019, we set out taking our experience in DC coupled commercial technology and bringing it to the single phase MDU space with the energy share solution, where we would contract with a project owner or an association of apartment owners, then install small clusters of systems with inverters for each unit tied in on the DC side, which smooths out the wide load variance and is able to produce a system that is bankable for the lifetime for that set of units. The Holu system is fit for single family, or it can be clustered. It's got a state-of-the-art hybrid inverter. I'm not selling here, but I'm just explaining. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. It's got the safest chemistry in the battery that's available on the market today, so we're very happy with the solution that we put together. We've actually installed a number of these on off-grid homes. Our first major project was COA. It's a low-income housing workforce development project in Kaloa on Kauai. If you search for Holu Energy on YouTube, there's about a 3-minute video that pops up in the first couple videos that walks through the project in detail. This project was greenfield when we first were designing it, so we had to size it with no historic load data. COA solar was the first application of a directed energy sharing in the entire U.S. to our understanding. And unlike the Mackay project, this project and the systems in it have proved bankable, as a Hawaii-based institutional investor owns it currently. At the bottom of the slide, you can see data from 1 month of one building. It's from about a year ago. We clustered each of the buildings. There's like 23 buildings, some of them 4 units, some of them 6 units. Note that production, if you could see it, is fairly even on the left across the 6 units, but the consumption is not. Unit 3 consumes less than 6 kilowatt hours a day, but Unit 6 is consuming literally 10 times that. Now, that's either a bunch of children, a lot of air conditioning, or a grow facility, right? This is not atypical for MDU systems. This is normal. This is what you see. So if you tried to do it as individual systems, the financials would be horrific. It simply wouldn't be bankable. So our DC sharing system solves this problem, making bankable solar funding by third party accessible for MDUs. This brings us to our flagship, next slide. Our flagship project, Island Palm Communities, We are targeted to do solar plus storage on 5,000 homes in the Army communities across the island of Oahu. These systems, like Hawai'i, are non-exporting systems. We did a pilot with 6 homes clustered together, actually a cluster of 2 and a cluster of 4, that gave confidence to IPC and ultimately to the Army that this was the thing to do. We got the PPA approved by the Assistant Secretary of the Army. Building this out started at the end of last year. It's probably going to take us somewhere around another 2 to 4 years to do. And we're mostly constrained by how many crews that we can get into the neighborhoods and by the amount of labor that we can find to build them. That's an old slide, but that's okay. The implications of this project is when it's complete, it will add somewhere between 7 and 8% to the amount of rooftop solar on Oahu by this project alone. These systems are designed to be great grid citizens. They're non-exporting, they have volt-watt enabled, frequency watt enabled, they can use power factor to help the grid, and they're ready for grid service if called upon. The first 200 homes, actually, that we're doing are in the scheduled dispatch program. Next. Oh, no, go back. Sorry. One more. Implications are that we can serve low-income housing and condo associations with bankable solar, which means that we can go faster, as Governor Green is asking us to do. We are doing our first AOAO in Mililani, Nahoa Apartments, 232 units, and we're starting the install next month. Our Holu power solution should be a part of the solution for driving cheaper, clean energy into Hawaii's generation suite faster. We are working to bring this technology also to California's MDU markets, which is about 40 times the size of Hawaii's MDU markets. As Rocky said, we are a Hawaii-born company. This is a Hawaii-born approach, and we intend to take it to the world. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you everybody for being here. Rocky, thanks for the great introduction. The one thing, I never did get my double E, so I'm not double E, but I do work with engineers. So I am the founder of Pacific Panel Cleaners. I got involved in the photovoltaic industry in Hawaii in 2006. After I got out of the Navy for the 8.5 years, it was a great time. And then in 2009, I'll never forget when the tax credits came out, because in 2006 there was 8 companies in the Hawaiian Islands doing photovoltaic. And 2009 we had 286 on Oahu alone. And there was a day I remember reading the paper. We used to have this thing called a paper. You'd open up every now and then. And on the front it talked about that there was 50,000 houses that had photovoltaic rooftop on it. And I was driving over the Poly, and I had a brilliant idea. It came to my head. It was in 2009 BC, before children. I was like, I'm going to go out there. I said, I'm going to go clean 3 houses in the morning. I'm going to surf all afternoon. My girlfriend's going to come home from teaching. I'll have dinner ready. I'm going to be greatest guy in the world. Well, fast forward 15 years later, I've got 2 kids. She's now my wife, and we're operating on full-time on Oahu, Maui, and we take care of systems on every island. It was great watching legislation help push the renewable market. I saw the giant boom, and I was really fortunate to be there. I've been around, started with push brooms and trying to figure out how to do everything because thought it was a market. My first 7 years was great because, well, nobody believed it too much, and I got to help go talk about it and teach about it and try to promote it. So this slide over here I think is pretty entertaining because I've seen a lot of funny things out there. I consider them funny because you have them. This O&M, like Catherine was talking this morning, our great keynote speaker, one of the things that popped out to me, she talked about PG&E. The one thing they put on the back burner was O&M. Well, I happened to start the first solar O&M company in the Hawaiian Islands, and so I think they made a mistake, and I'm pretty happy that I got into this because it's now 15 years later, and like I said, we've come across a lot of items out there that, some of you guys will recognize the bad in them. The fire is usually pretty relevant about bad, and the green roof over there would be good if it wasn't covering all their solar panels. So that's how that started. Click it up. And then so from starting with that, we ended up changing everything and going and you developed, because also when I was in the Navy, I was a quality control inspector, And I started doing quality control inspections in the Navy. And one of the items that we started working about, and when I was doing the PV things, is, there's other areas to start like looking at it. So a basic maintenance plan we started coming up with is, visual inspection. You monitor the systems. Back then we had string level testing. We still do it. Cleaning, then like the inverter filter cleaning and changing out. But we also brought thermal imaging into it. Thermal imaging was a really giant change in the whole industry. So I've gotten to see a lot of the changes in the O&M market and how to protect people's solar investments. Because you could put them up there, but if you don't take care of them, well, look at PG&E. We know what could happen. So as you start looking, you could see different items on PV panels. And the one on, I think it's your left side, I hope it is the hot spots. So that's cells in the panel actually having problems. And the picture on the right is diode failures. So when you're out there doing cleaning inspection, yeah, I know, Pacific Panel Cleaners, bad name, great company. Just remember that. That's a pitch. But we had it, and the image on the right is a diode failure. So what ends up happening in a diode failure is you're getting 1/3 power production out of the PV modules. And this actually was on a site over here in Maui that helped us mitigate to get all the panels removed and reinstalled at the panel manufacturer's cost from the warranty claims we were able to put together. So it's been great being a thermal imager. And then Rocky's controlling the slide. There we go. Now, normally there's things you can't identify. So this one, we identified this hot spot over there, and it had a delta T of 24, I think, on it. But when we took it off, you're able to look at the panel on the backside. We're actually getting burn marks on it. So when we started doing this, the cleaning idea of bringing it up, we've developed all areas to go through. And bringing up the thermal imaging, I like to show this a lot because this is a big advancement in the PV maintenance area, because you understand what cleaning is. I don't think I need to show pictures of that. And testing, guy with the meter, not too entertaining. This is a lot better. So we started working with this, and this helps develop. And every year when we're out there checking our customer systems, we're able to start getting baseline analysis. We're able to track it, and we get trend analysis. So we know how the systems are actually operating. Now, we went from handheld cameras to thermal cameras and thermal drones. We had the first thermal imaging drone presented by FLIR. They actually contacted me and told me about it, and I was happy enough to get one of the first FLIR views that was made. And if you look at the image on the right, that was the FLIR view back, 2016, 17. And that was probably from about 25 feet above the panels. The image on the left is 450 feet away. And I think we get a little bit clearer detail on the hotspots on the panel. So the advancements in the technology we're seeing and the rapid movement to help us protect people's investments has grown rapidly. It's really, really impressive. It's really amazing. At least I think it's impressive. Not everybody does, but I think it's great. And the drones are great. It's a lot quicker. It's safer. We get a great overall view, and we check people's systems. We fly the same pattern year over year. So if we do find issues on a manufacturer's items, then we're able to change it or show it to them due to the baselines of saying, last year it wasn't like this year it's like that, So we started working through that, but also, as I talked about earlier, we had the brushes and everything. So with the drones also came robots, and I'm really happy I got to tell people I own a robot. So besides that being cool, we call it a solar Zamboni. I got really excited about that. And we bring it up because now that's also helped us be safer and operate better. They're a lot more efficient. They do water reduction as well because it's a lot more efficient. And with coming on resiliency, now we're able to help maintain more systems that we couldn't reach. You couldn't get to them because the way they were laid out. And I know people have seen pictures of people walking on solar panels. Not good. So now we're able to reach them. So we've developed and we've worked with it. And fortunately now, we're like on the 7th year of the solar O&M conferences, and it's now hitting big markets. So we're going from rooftop conditions, commercial sites, we're bringing it around. That's Leah, our drone commander in the middle. That's the guys happy that they don't have to do a handheld on this job because that job used to take 8 hours doing a held-hand camera on. Leah showed up, she flew it. 15 minutes later, she said, I'm done. And we had better data than we could have had before, pinpointed operations. We were able to identify a lot of things. I can go over what we can identify with a thermal camera really quickly. You can identify downstrings, hot spots, diode failures just by looking at it, and then you do a system analysis with testing to verify that it's the problem. And if it becomes the problem on the panel, then we have the deal to work with the warranty claim for the manufacturer, help and develop our long-term systems to keep them operating, because you could have a 100 kW system, you know, if all of a sudden you got 10 kW that's not working and you didn't know it, you're at 90% efficiency before we even start derating for dirt. So this is one of our greatest tools that we work with. And I'm honored to have everybody on my team that I have that takes care of these things for me. And then, like over here, we started switching from string inverters to optimizers and microinverters. And sometimes they build a map, and the people didn't build the map right, and you got to try to find them so you could change them out. It's like playing whack-a-mole. It's not the greatest game in the world when it's August and you're hot trying to lift panels up to see if the serial number matches. It's a 16-number serial number that's really tiny, so you can't really see it, so you got to lift it up. So these actually identify where the failures are. We're able to pick them out, so this reduces our time on the roof. We're able to identify it quicker, and it's being able to work with it, work with people's systems and take care of them from time to time. You're able to really, really speed up your progress. Now, talked about my robot. This is another unit that we've got, comes out here. With the advent of the solar industry being developed and everybody being supportive, you know, tax credits bringing out, solar farms have come out. My robot's good, this guy's better. This is pretty much one person can sit there and operate it, and you drive down the rows and then you're able to clean your solar panels. There's a water tank on the back. What I'm saying basically here is, with the development of the PV systems, there has been the development and a long-term haul on the O&M of the systems and to take care of it. Unfortunately for me and the guys who have to scrub the panels for me and work with me, we're getting equipment like this. It makes it a lot more efficient, safer, and the results from the years I've done it, it's amazing from the years I've worked on. And I'm just honored that I was able to work with Sunbrush USA and got certified with them a couple of years ago on this equipment. And working to bring more of these, bring these out here to make everything work. And I appreciate everybody in their time. That's about what I got for now.
Thanks, Rocky. In the previous one, yeah, thanks. So I didn't really tell you this, Rocky, but when you asked me to be on a panel about local innovation in Hawaii, I was a little bit hesitant to say yes, because I am, you know, I'm not from here. I don't live here. I had never actually been to Hawaii until August of last year. But I thought about it, and you know, I've been doing this disaster relief work for a few years now, so I've seen my fair share of disasters, and I have never seen a response from the renewable energy industry for a disaster like I did with the Maui wildfires. It was honestly pretty incredible, and Footprint Project is really just grateful to have been able to be a small part of it. So I said yes, and I'm really happy to be here with y'all to talk about the local innovation that we deployed on Maui after the wildfires last year. So Footprint Project, just a little bit about who we are and what we do. We are a small nonprofit organization. When I say small, I mean we're 5 full-time and 3 part-time staff. So we're not like the Red Cross of solar disaster relief or anything like that quite yet. And our mission is to build back greener after disasters by providing cleaner energy to communities in crisis. So our goal is to really break that negative feedback loop of, you know, relying on fossil fuels to respond to and recover from disasters that are increasingly exacerbated by climate change. And I don't want to get too into the weeds on sort of the equipment that we deploy, but the photo that's up here is a good example. This is actually after Hurricane Ida in Southeast Louisiana in 2021. The system in the back is a trailer with solar panels on the top, batteries, and inverter and balancer system inside, and then the unit in the front is a palletized system with batteries on the pallet that can be forklifted into place, and then a temporary array that can be just set up and taken down in a parking lot. Just a little bit about where we've been. We started in 2018, and since then we have been to over 22 disaster missions. And then just some data about what we've deployed, which I'm always cognizant when I'm talking to groups like this, that I bet you there's people in this room that deploy that amount of solar and storage like every day before breakfast. But just to give you an idea of the scale at which we work. And so Maui, how do we get to Maui? People always ask us this, and the answer is, how does anything really happen anymore? Social media. We got a message from one of basically a friend of a friend who lost everything in the fire. He lost his home, he lost his business, and he sent us a message. And Footprint Project is sort of part of our disaster response ethos. We never go into a disaster without a local request from somebody on the ground. And so here we have our request. We started to sort of through the grapevine, or through the coconut wireless, as they call it here, started to hear of many more sites, and that the need was going to be huge. But how were we going to, what were we going to do in terms of deploying equipment? What we do in the Continental U.S. Around the Gulf Coast, where we have equipment stage, and on the Pacific Coast, where we also have some equipment stage, we kind of operate in a you call, we haul model, where, the person will let us know what sites are needed, and then we will go drop it off and deploy it. Obviously, that's not something that we were able to do in Hawaii. And so we called, over the past 6 years, we've developed a pretty robust network of folks in the renewable energy industry. And, if they don't know someone, if they're not the right person, they usually know someone. And so we got connected with a few key folks here on Maui. And, donations started to pour in of money, of equipment. We said, what's on Maui? What's there that we can deploy right now? And who's there right now that can deploy it for us? And so by we, I mean they got to work, assembling these systems from equipment donations. We were paying them from donations that we were getting from all over the country, all over the world, really. And they worked just, hours and hours to get these systems built and ready for us to deploy throughout these community sites that were requesting them. And so I'm going to walk through a few sites that we supported and continue to support on Maui. This first one is at the Pukalani Community Church. So, as many of you probably know, there was an issue with potable drinking water after the fires. And so this site was actually supporting a atmospheric water generator that pulls the humidity from the air and runs it through a filtration system, turns it into potable water. And we paid these local installers to install this system at the church. And this system is now serving, I think there's like 50 families a day that are still coming by the church to get drinking water. This next site is a preschool that burnt down in the fire. And Karen Kanikoa, the woman in the photo here with our operations director, Will, she very generously decided to move the preschool to her home in the Honokohau Valley, which was not affected by the fire, and is, serving 15 to 20 families every single day. They live completely off grid, and she normally uses a gas generator to run the needs at her home. And we paid a local installer to install this pretty small system. It's like a 5 kilowatt hour battery, a 2 kilowatt inverter, and it's providing refrigeration and Wi-Fi to keep the school going until they rebuild. This next site is these folks are providing an amazing service for the community. So they are based out of a parking lot, like right outside of the burn zone. You can see it right there behind. And they are ensuring that the folks who are cleaning up, doing the remediation work, are doing it in a culturally sensitive and culturally appropriate manner. And so they're doing trainings out of this parking lot every morning, and they are running their office out of a completely off-grid solar system that was deployed by these two local installers right here. The Esterns Pohaku Beach Park, that is another large hub that is still running on the west side. They're providing meals and medical services and supplies for about 200 families still that are living in the condos on the west side. You can see here, before we deployed their solar system, they were running about 10 to 12, like 2 to 5 kilowatt gas generators every day. And I think the photo speaks for itself as to how untenable that was. And this is Mike and Willa happy with their solar system. And then the last but not least site is over at Napili Park. This is actually the biggest system that Footprint Project has ever contracted someone to deploy. It's powering that big Matson refrigerator container. It is a 3-phase system. We've never done that before. We thought it was impossible, and clearly it wasn't, because of the amazing ingenuity and grit of our local installers here on Maui. And all of these sites are, we ended up supporting over 20 sites. I chose these sites specifically to share with y'all today because they're all still running. Like, you can go see them. They're still just doing the work every single day. And then lastly, this is just sort of an illustration on how the resources flowed. So, like I said, cash donations, equipment donations, foundation grants, all of that came to Footprint Project. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We paid local installers to do the work, as well as procured some equipment. We procured as much as we could that was from, already either on Maui or somewhere in Hawaii, and then trickled down all of those resources to the community relief hubs that you just saw. And then I guess the last thing that I want to say is, usually after this, as my last slide, I usually have here's the long list of all of the folks who helped make this happen. And I didn't put that up here today, not because we're not incredibly grateful for all the partners that helped us do what we did together, but I think, the message, or my message, is less about, who did what and which companies did what, and more about where it came from. It came from right here. And I think disaster relief traditionally can have this sort of white horse mentality of folks from the outside coming in to save the day, when really the folks who are the best equipped to do the work are the ones that actually were affected by the disaster. And so, yeah, we were just super grateful to be able to do what we did because of the folks here.
Thank you so much. What a great story of local innovation. So Jamie, we'll do some questions now, and a few questions have come in, but I'll start with you, Jamie. So it's amazing to me that you basically set up a series of microgrids that are still running today in Lahaina. So in some ways, you sort of reformed a grid in Lahaina if you will. What are some lessons learned? How can we use this? Are there lessons that we can take in our rebuilding of Lahaina and of our transformation of our grid going forward from that you learned from your experience here or anywhere else?
Yes. Oh, Rocky. Why do you ask me such a hard question? Yeah, I think it's really interesting because a lot of people have been asking Footprint Project that question. It's a really, really, really big question, I think. You know, how do we build back Lahaina better? And I never really know how to answer it. I think I was reminded, or I thought of something while the previous panel was up here when they were talking about moving at the speed of trust. And, you know, I used to work in federal government. I used to work in state government. And then I've also been on the, you know, community advocacy side of things. And I've learned that sometimes moving at the speed of trust can be disguised as denying, delaying, and deflecting. And I think the solar industry has really built up some amazing trust in the community, certainly over the past, you know, few decades. But I think I've seen it with my own eyes that the community has really built up trust with the industry over the last, you know, 9 months here. And I would, you know, I hate to do this, but I would throw that question back to you as the leader of an industry to say, you know, what, you know, how are you going to use your industry, you know, super robust industry here in Hawaii, lots of, you know, power at the legislature and at the, you know, on Maui, you know, how are y'all going to use that power to ensure that the trust that you've built up in the last few months, few years, doesn't go away because of what could potentially be a lot of, I think, glacial movement when, you know, we saw what can happen when you can work with the community quickly and get things done if you really try.
Well, thank you for saying that, Jamie. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, a lot of the reason, this was just an amazing partnership with Footprint Project, and I really have to give credit out to individuals and local individuals and local companies here in Hawaii that really stepped up and were like immediately on the phone to me saying, what can we do to help? How can we help? And just put it all out there on the line to help folks out here. It really was heartwarming, and it's great that it looks like you saw some of the results of that. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a good example of how if there's a will and a need, you can get things done at a more urgent pace than otherwise. So hopefully we'll take some of those lessons and show the results going forward in some of the work we do to advocate for industry. I mean, to throw it back at you a little bit, like, what's the impact in terms of, do you have the numbers for greenhouse gas emissions and money that you've actually saved folks in Maui from these donated solar powered microgrids that are providing free power to folks?
We do have those numbers. Yep. I do not have them off the top of my head, but we do have those numbers, and I'd be happy to share them with you.
Great.
Data is key.
Yeah. So Fred, what an amazing story of almost by chance happening into a huge growth industry. I mean, operations and maintenance is so important going forward. Of your travels and your work, what percentage, when you get to a project, like overall, what percentage of the system is working to capacity? Like, what's the nameplate capacity factor of systems, and what's the actual performance that you're getting from those systems that you found from your experience?
Thanks, Rocky. That's not too loaded. So what happens a lot of times is we usually get the call that all of a sudden their electric bill went to the roof. Then you'll show up and the whole system's not working. But we've been doing analysis on systems that are out there, and I can say 12% aren't working. From full systems not working to one microinverter being down, overall from the sites that we've taken care of. And after we take customers on for long-term care, we're more on top of it, but we still do see failure rates, even with some maintenance in place. It's the worst is when we get called to sites, for instance, some of the older systems that were installed, 400 kW, 500 kW systems, you show up, 2 of their 135 kW inverters are down. And they don't know when it went down, there was no monitoring, so you sit there. So to make it a quick answer, I'd say easily 12%. I could stick with that number without a problem. It is not functioning.
So what do you see as the opportunity going forward for O&M? Are there any expansion areas that you've been looking at for the O&M business?
The O&M industry is growing rapidly. One of the areas that we've been working with, and I want to throw a shout out to Inter-Island Solar for starting this, is the recycle program of photovoltaic panels. We come across systems with damaged panels, and one of our big problems, and with background of being an environmental science degree, is you sat there, you know what's actually inside of PV panels. I don't want to go into it, but it's not good for the earth. And to have it put back into our land has not been a good thing. When we worked with one of the companies that we found recall on their panels, I sat on a lot of the conference calls arguing that we're not going to dump these 5,600 failed panels into our landfills, and I made them and how to recycle it, and it was really tough. Inter-Island Solar has now stepped up that they are setting up a recycle program on the islands that you're able to bring it to their facilities. My team is now working, when we do find spare panels and damaged panels, we're able to take it, we'll work with Inter-Island and bring it to them. They have their own way of doing it. You can go into it a lot deeper. So that's one area that I've seen in the O&M field that has really grown. And I think when people are installing their systems, they need to have the foresight for that this is going to be a cost, and they want to take care of it, because you're going green, you want to take care of the land, don't damage it. The other area that we see the bigger growth in is, as I've seen, from seriously going from single pole scrubbing to using robots to now being able to sit in a vehicle and drive to take care of it. There's going to be more automation in the future. There's people a lot smarter than me out there that are creating these ideas. I'm just fortunate enough that I can read and see it and be like, oh, that's a better idea, instead of me scrubbing, or these guys will work, and make it a safer environment. So as the O&M industry is growing, those are two areas. The automation I definitely see developing and growing will be happening, is with the recycling. What are you going to do with the old equipment? Because that needs to be put at the forefront. I know a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but it's a reality. There's a lot of old systems out there that are getting taken down, and I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of clients that consult with my company and myself on, they're going to do a repower of the system. They're like, Fred, what should we do? Now there's a solution, and we're making that solution happen on the islands. It's happening everywhere else. It just needs to be put on the forefront. And I think that's a big part of the O&M side, because we're going to be there for the long haul, taking care of the systems. And with, like I said, generation of equipment going forward, moving forward, we got our drones, they're programmed, they're going great, robots. I don't know, there's going to be more items going out there. AI is doing a lot for us, but those are the two big areas: the recycling of the photovoltaic panels and the old equipment that was put in for them advancing forward.
Thanks. So Ted, wow, I saw in your bio you've done 75 PPAs. That's just amazing. That's a ton of contract work, a ton of negotiation, mind-numbing. So I'd really like to hear from you. What are some of the sort of opportunities that you see in the multi-dwelling unit space, in the DER space on Hawaii, and then what have been some of the obstacles that we should be focused on trying to overcome?
Yeah, mean, my brief kind of talked about, I think, what are the opportunities. It's really finding ways to integrate DRs into communities. One of the challenges with AOAOs is you kind of have to sell it twice, right? You have to sell it to the board, and AOAO boards are a box of chocolates. Some of them are very professional. I met with one yesterday. It's very professional, and they've got some really smart people on it. And some of them are very dysfunctional, and that makes it a challenge. I've actually I went to Associa's training for board members, and they talked about insurance and stuff like that. The insurance world, just moving to challenges because that's where I live. Insurance rates because of Lahaina. Some AOAOs are seeing their insurance go up anywhere from 150% to 1,000%. Sue Savio spoke at this event, and she hopes that it'll be similar to Aniki, that eventually it'll kind of come back into normal spaces. But I think that inflation means that the new normal is definitely going to be higher. So managing your costs all around, that's a challenge. Another challenge, which our approach kind of helps with, but it still is a challenge, is permitting. City and County of Honolulu has made some great progress. DPP has made some great progress in permitting, but I just sent an email to the director saying, hey, we applied for this permit 18 months ago, and I'm being told it's not gonna have another look for another 3 months. That's really a labor challenge as much as anything. They just don't have enough people with the expertise to review permits. So the permitting challenge is, their automation is helping, but there still is a significant challenge in that. Our solution, solves a financing problem, but the other problem, which I mentioned briefly, is there just not enough people out there to build these systems. So it's unemployment in Hawaii. We all celebrate, and we should. It's 3.1% last I saw, but that means that your labor pool is very shallow to be able to get folks. Folks like Ducky and Rhino have a training center out there on the Waianae Coast, and may 1,000 of those bloom, helping people transition to that. I think that's probably enough for now. Right?
So Jamie, what were some of the challenges that you faced in deploying these assets, and how did you overcome them ultimately?
There were no challenges. Yeah, that's a great question. I think, I think we've joked about this, Rocky, that I sort of came into Maui with no idea about how complex Maui is as a place. And also, the industry and, industry, politics, and trade competition that goes on. And so doing all of this work in the middle of a disaster, in the middle of trade competition and politics, and in the middle of a very complex ecosystem of Maui as a county and as an island, I think that inherently, as a starting point, was incredibly challenging to come in as an outsider. And so having the locals on the ground here from, not only community partners that we worked with that were doing the, relief work, but also, I relied on folks like Rocky and, won't name names, but other folks, industry folks here to talk me through a bunch of stuff. There were a bunch of late night, calls that I was having with some of our distributor and manufacturing partners. With the time difference, I live in New Orleans. And so that was, one of the reasons why it made what we did work is because we had the local people that were helping us do the work. challenges. What other challenges? I think, one thing that we struggle with is the capacity to accept and manage donations. Whereas, we're a pretty small organization, and one of the challenges that we always have, but one of the challenges that presented itself, especially with our Maui response, was that, the outpouring of support from all over was huge. We had, folks from Hawaii and Maui that were wanting to donate their time and resources, but we also had people in Florida and people in California and people in Canada who wanted to help as well. And so trying to figure out, this company that wants to donate 6 pallets of solar panels that are coming from Ontario, and they can't pay for shipping. What are we, but they don't want them to go to a project in, New Orleans. They want them to go to a project on Maui. So what do we do with that request? And then also, what does that mean? 6 pallets of panels isn't that many, but we did have a couple of companies that said, hey, we want to donate 100 pallets of solar panels. Well, that sounds amazing. However, what does that mean for the distributor on Maui that all of a sudden is flooded with 100 panels that's displacing their business from a Canadian solar company? There was definitely a lot of learnings that I had, and I played a lot of solar disaster diplomacy that I didn't realize I was in for. And yeah, I think we still need the industry's help to help us make sure that those things, disasters are messy. They're always messy. They're always going to be, no matter what. But at Footprint Project, I think, we could really use the industry's help with making sure that the road is a little less bumpy, and that the resources are getting, putting industry and trade politics aside as much as possible to make sure that the resources are getting to the people who need them when they need it the most.
Thanks. I'll go to some questions from the audience now. This is a question for all of you. Do you have any internship or apprenticeship opportunities available?
Yes.
All the time.
So I would encourage folks, if the person who asked that question, take a look at their websites, their information, and get in touch with them. For Ted, is natural load variation between housing units sufficient, or does HHE actively manage load, sequentially charging EVs or heating water?
Yeah, so we have a controller that we can attach to a compliant, it's like a grid smart water heater. Typical 40-gallon water heater, if I recall correct, is about a 1.5 kilowatt hours, just in the variability in the band that it operates in. So on our COA project, we have that. Each home has their own water heater, and we installed it as a water heating, a solar water heating system. In the afternoon, when the batteries are getting towards the top of their state of charge, we will top off the water heaters so that we can do that. We have some other load management functions that we're exploring. PV is a whole. EV charging is a whole different animal because EV charging is largely in the evening. It is typically a significant amount of load, and so you really kind of need to think about EV charging a little more. I was just meeting with an AOAO yesterday, and at this stage, rather than building out solar in an AOAO and tying it into individual units, my thinking is that you're still going to save money. Just charge your charge your EVs off the grid on the common area. Hook up your charging infrastructure to those circuits. You're going to have to upsize those circuits because those circuits were built for lighting, so they're typically pretty light, pretty low amperage. But you can charge off of your battery, but then you have the round trip issue twice, right? You have your losses twice, so. Yeah, we think about that.
Thanks. Fred, is residential maintenance an annual thing or once every 5 years?
Depends on what you want. If you want it to keep working, I'd do it annually. Now, so when I first started, I started reading the manuals, and all the photovoltaic installation manuals for the panel manufacturers and the inverter manufacturers, all of them had an annual recommended cleaning inspection on it. So that's what we went with. We do have some other sites that we do more often, but we always go with an annual cleaning inspection that covers a couple things. And you'll notice I'm also saying inspection, because if you're getting up on the roof, you want to inspect it because you want to make sure you're not having hanging wires. There's a whole bunch of other items, loose end clamps, animal infestation underneath the panels. You also want to check the roof condition for the customer as well when you're up there. So you do an annual clean inspection. You also check the conduit. If you guys, from the first slide I had, there was a broken conduit that someone used electrical tape to put back on just to let you know it didn't work. It let water run down to the electrical panel, and, well, that didn't fare very well for the electrical panel. And so you want to be up there annually to do a follow-up. The 5-year thing, a lot of people talk about, that usually deals with solar hot water. I'm a PV contractor. Solar hot water is for other people, but that's usually for 5 years for your solar hot water. So while I'm there, I'll plug in, take care of your solar hot water as well, because anything for resiliency and for protecting yourself for the future, for energy management, is crucial and important, and maintaining your equipment is really important, because you can put it up there. If you don't take care of it, it doesn't work.
So the prior panel with Governor and with Hawaii's leadership, talked about big policy moves and things that we think are needed to get us to our renewable energy goals. I was just wondering, Ted, I'll start with you. Like, if there was like one or two things that could happen that would make it easier for you to achieve your goals and your plans, what would that be? What would they be?
I'd say self-certification on permits. Government, I used to be in government, not just at the state, but obviously, actually I was a teacher as well, and then in the Navy. And, government definitely has a function in our society, but a lot of times one of government's best function is to create lanes for people to innovate. And it's not just government, it's large organizations don't innovate very well. So when I was at Johnson Controls outsourced its innovation. It had, small companies that innovated. So getting out of the way of people who are innovating and doing things is a very admirable and high calling.
So let's go to an audience question. Is there a coordinated effort or program to refurbish panels and set up for smaller tiny homes or ADUs or other structures, not necessarily single family residential or MDUs?
Yeah, I think about that a lot. With Reuse Hawaii, they do that with wood from homes. I have a system that I may be pulling 60 kW off it, panels that are okay, but it's where can I go and develop a secondary market? That is I would call that not even nascent yet, but there should be a secondary market of, if not all PV equipment, but certainly of panels, where we can take panels and a place that financially wouldn't be able to bear an install, and add a little bit to it, but not have to purchase the panels and just reuse it for facilities like that.
I have a quick answer on that. We do get a lot of calls from places that have systems that they want to put up, like farms, like little farmhouse areas that they ask about it, that they're building more off-grid. So a lot of the refurbished panels, they don't really refurbish PV panels due to the possibility of problems on the panels, so they don't want to put them on a house or anything like that. So I've seen these get used as we've done aquaponic systems for schools. We've used them. We're trying to work with different groups to try to develop and bring that together. And I know that's something with the recycling and everything that's going on. These are all questions that come up. Reuse Hawaii has done a fantastic job with wood and different equipment. There is a market for it, but it falls down to a safety concern to make it a public market, because I've been trying to discuss that for years with different people. But it is able to be used on like off-grid site systems, such as the aquaponic systems we've helped work on.
Yeah, that would work well as long as there's a good monitoring process, a good vetting process, and there's an O&M, and when that, it's going to have a shorter lifetime, so you have to be able to monitor, say, okay, this abbreviated lifetime is done, we've got to put a new not refurbished, but a new vetted, kind of like inspected new panel in there. So it's got to have an infrastructure and a process to it.
And so that brings us to our time. I just want to join me in thanking this panel for providing us with these unique perspectives on innovation and know-how that's occurring in Hawaii real time. So thank you very much.